What is going on, everybody? This morning I have some interesting news to bring to you. We have a thread on Twitter from someone who I will admit to you I do not know, so take all of this with a pinch of salt. However, this thread itself has been referenced on many different reputable websites. So evidently, this is a person that is at least somewhat known in the tech community and can be believed at least somewhat. I will again advise you to take this with a pinch of salt, but it may be accurate, and we're going to break it down as if it is accurate, and we'll just go from there. So let's take a look at the thread now. This individual, who I am not even going to attempt to butcher that name out of respect for other cultures in the world. Here in Knoxville, Tennessee, we don't learn how to say words with J's and C's next to them. This is what they had to say. They've obtained info about camera hardware configurations on several upcoming Google Pixel devices, and we're going to break that down in this thread, and I'm going to break down the breakdown. Now, my understanding of how we get this data is individuals like this will get a hold of very recent releases of the Google Camera app, and they will dig into that camera app and they will pull out IDs of devices and IDs of cameras. Now, as you can see here in this first tweet here, Google has obfuscated all of the sensors' names in their code, but there is a way apparently to dig in and still get this information. So Google is actively trying to prevent this from happening. Apparently, you're still able to get in. They included sensor IDs that can be matched to actual parts using various resources such as camera drivers on GitHub. So it's not as simple anymore of just seeing the camera sensor's name. They actually are having to grab the ID and then match that up with drivers on GitHub or something like that. So that's where we are. So the first device here is the Pixel 7 and the Pixel 7 Pro C10 and P10. Both devices use the same GN1 primary sensor and IMX381 ultra-wide as before. So the GN1 is a Samsung-made sensor. Best I can recall, it is a 50 megapixel sensor. It's the same one that was in the Pixel 6. So the same primary and the same ultra-wide as in the 6, staying with the 7 Pro and the 7, and that actually does line up really well with what we have seen in the past other leaks. The front camera apparently is going to be using the Samsung 3J1, an 11 megapixel sensor with dual pixel. So you get dual pixel. What you're going to be able to do from that is you're going to be able to get better depth, because in order to get depth, think about it like your eyes. Your eyes are kind of like dual pixels. They're side by side and they're separated. So by doing that, you can get depth. If you close one eye, you don't have depth anymore. That's a single pixel. So dual pixel, this is a massive oversimplification, but it's good enough for the principles of this video. It's going to allow you to have better depth mapping, which is good for portrait mode. It also could allow for semi-secure face authentication, as it says in this tweet. What they can do is they can use the dual pixels, which gives you depth, and then they can basically use the micro vibrations, the movement of your hand, to actually augment that depth mapping. And by virtue of that, we've gone beyond a simple photo of the face, two-dimensional matching up, and we've gone to something that approximates a 3D face scan that can be done very quickly and can be used to authenticate for face unlock. Another change they mention here is to the telephoto sensor. It's going from Sony's IMX586 to Samsung's GM1. Now, they talk about here briefly that while that does seem like a strange move because the actual specifications between these two devices are really similar, it can make sense because the processing is different. So it could help consistency there in the actual photo. I think we've seen this on a lot of Android devices, and you've seen how Apple has done this better, where when you move from the standard to the telephoto to the ultra wide, you get a different looking photo. The color profile, the temperatures look different. Everything looks a little bit different from lens to lens, from sensor to sensor. Probably more accurate, whereas on Apple, more recent Apple devices, they stay really, really consistent. So this may be being done in order to kind of help aid that situation and make each sensor look more similar. This is a snippet from an article written on medium.com back in 2019, actually comparing these two sensors because they were so similar. For the most part, the two sensors are the same. The major difference is between their tech. Samsung has its in-house tech while Sony has its own. They're both 48 megapixels. They're really, really similar. So likely not a radical change there, but maybe some more consistent processing. Now, this is a really interesting one. They found a codenamed device called Lynx, and they said it could be a high-end 2022 Pixel. So maybe that Pixel Ultra that has been rumored, it's using the familiar GN1, so the same primary sensor. But then after that, the secondary lens is an IMX787, which could be a tele, as they could say here. They don't really know for sure how it's going to be used. which is a very new sensor. The front-facing camera is a Sony IMX712, which is also extremely new. Now, they're saying here, rather than this being some Pixel Ultra, this could be an internal device Google uses to evaluate new camera sensors. So it could be basically nothing. Nothing we need to worry about. But interesting to see, hard to say what's going on there for sure. The upcoming Pixel tablet appears to be using two IMX355s, just a basic 8 megapixel sensor that's been used as a selfie camera on the regular Pixel 6. You can put a better lens on the back of it to make it a rear facing sensor, and it's going to be fine for a tablet. Nothing crazy there. Lastly, and probably most interestingly, P7, an unknown foldable, likely codenamed Pipet or Passport, which would be the Google Passport, the Google Foldable, the Google Z Fold, if you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. While the exact positional setup is unknown, they say there is a list of sensors. So a standard GN1 for the main sensor, so that 48 megapixel that Google has been using now in everything, and that's what Google likes to do. They like to use the same sensor for a long time with a lot of different devices because over time their computational photography gets really, really good. Pixel 6a, going back to that 12 megapixel sensor they've been using since the Pixel 2, is a really good example of that. It's a budget phone that takes pictures as good as flagship phones. Duh, that's how that works for Google. They're going to do that with the GN1, it seems, going forward. IMX 363, IMX 386, and then listed as folded IMX 355. Now, some of this is interesting, right? So the standard GN1 for the main sensor makes sense, but then the fact that they're packing in the 363 is really interesting because that is the aforementioned 12 megapixel sensor that has been the Pixel's primary for a long time. So it's got that and that. I'm not sure what that other one is being used for. Then the 386 is the Pixel 6's ultra wide. So are they using the 363 with a telephoto lens on it? Would that, I guess that would work. They can probably do something like that. I'm not a camera expert in that regard, but I suppose that's possible. So then you've got the new favorite, the old favorite, Pixel 6's ultra wide, and then on the folded, so you fold it around, the cover display, it has Pixel 6's selfie camera, presumably meaning that there's no selfie camera on the inside, which would be a little bit weird, but I don't think I would necessarily hate if true. I guess it's also possible that some of this just isn't set, right? What if Google is testing the GN1 in Passport and they're testing the 363? What if they haven't decided yet, right? That could potentially make some sense. What if there's no selfie on the internal listed because they're still testing and they don't know what's going to be there? The good news is whichever way Google decides to go with that primary sensor, whether it is the 12 megapixel that we're used to seeing, the same one in that Pixel 6a, which I hope to have some coverage about here shortly as I try to get more into Pixel coverage, or it is that GN1 that's on the Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro. Likelihood is that it's going to be one of, if not the best camera systems on any foldable device. Now, I know maybe I should specify in North America, right? Because, or in America specifically, because like Huawei's done some pretty crazy stuff. Xiaomi, they're going to be there as well. But at any rate, it's going to be a really impressive camera setup, whichever way it actually does go. There's a lot of gray area here in a leak like this, but at any rate, there is a lot of interesting stuff here about the future of Pixel smartphones and their cameras. Big shout out to this Twitter user. Go give them a follow for more potential leaks like this. Guys, let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.